Welcome to the SAFe Business Agility Podcast. This is the place to get advice, stories, perspectives, and updates about SAFe and related topics to help you work differently and build the future. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Today's guest is Tegan Harbridge from Agile. Tegan talks about the company, her history with the company, a pretty cool startup story, and all of the great things that Agile is bringing to market to help Jira users get more from their solution. We also talk a lot about feedback loops, life, and more. Enjoy this one with Tegan Harbridge. All right, we are back here at SAFe Summit. We are talking to our friends from Agile, and I'm going to screw this up.
That's fine. You wouldn't be the first this week.
All right, I'm hanging out with Tegan.
You've nailed it.
Yes. All right. At any rate. So Tegan, tell us about you. Tell us about Agile. Why the heck you're at SAFe Summit? And let's just hear who you are.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a journey. I guess I started, first things first is how I got into tech. Prior to working in tech, I'd been working in corporate events and interior design, which is...
Wait.
Couldn't be further from tech.
Hold on, though. Okay, because there's two things I need here. One, a quick critique on how's the event?
From a design standpoint?
Oh, no. From an event execution standpoint.
Okay.
Do we get a B?
How honest do you want me to be? No, the event itself is set up really well. The venue's amazing. The venue A+, right? I don't think you could ask for more from a venue. And the booths are great. Obviously, the Agile booth from a design point of view is the best.
I think this podcast booth is like a solid second.
The podcast booth is actually solid. When I walked in, it was one of the first things that I noticed. So you're doing well.
It's actually kind of awkward for me because people come in and it's like a funnel. So there's a lot of people I know from the industry over the years and I can't hide. So we're sitting here, we're having a conversation. People come up, they start waving.
And we look like we're literally in a fishbowl, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And Initially, I thought it would be cool if people could watch, but then I forgot how easily distracted I am. So as I sit here and look at you, I've got a behind view of us and a side view of us. It's proven to be a distraction. So next time, I'll just do sound foam and we'll call it good.
I don't know.
Interior design, I'm going to send you a picture of my office. It's got awkward angled ceilings. I need help.
That sounds pretty cool, to be honest. Unique.
I'll let you see it and you can tell me later.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So at any rate, you went from events and interior design to tech.
Yes. I guess the only parallel I can kind of draw is that I was actually in marketing. So I was working in marketing for an events company. I don't know if you know anything about events, but it's a rough slog. It is very long hours. I was super burnt out and I was looking for a pretty drastic change. Sure.
Well, I wasn't in events. I've done a lot of trade shows in my day, and I can just imagine for a booth this size, right? Yesterday I was sitting here all day while they built it. Tomorrow night when they're done, I'll be here until the crews come and tear it down. The show hours are long, but then the setup, the merching, all of the things take more hours on top of show hours, and you're just absolutely smoked.
Yeah. And people, rightly so, are really super invested in the design process. You're representing a company's brand, so they want to make sure that you're getting everything absolutely perfect. It was just a really tough slog, and it was something that I knew wasn't really passionate about. It wasn't long term for me, and I was just looking for a bit of a change. So when there was an opportunity at a startup, at an incubator.
That's really cool.
And so that was kind of my foot in the door, I guess, into tech. And it was really my first time being exposed to a very different way of working. The whole transparency in the way of working was a huge cultural shift.
Sure.
For me. A welcome one.
How many companies were in your incubator?
There were probably... I'd say there were around 20.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, there were around 20. So it was a really quick way to embrace the culture of tech and agility. It was my first
hyper agility.
Hyper agility, right? It's either you succeed or you don't.
I do some volunteer consulting in that space too. There's incubators in my town where part of their I guess, in processing, onboarding into the incubator is they have to sit through a session with me where we start talking about, vision, right? Because a lot of times founders get so focused on the thing that they don't really understand why, they don't understand where they're going. So if a time comes where they need to pivot, they don't know how to do it. So that's a lot of fun. And I can say the coolest one I've ever been involved with is a place in Brooklyn. It's called the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And I was working with a client and they were struggling. It's a bigger client. And they were struggling with how do we be more creative? And we ended up renting a space in the Brooklyn Navy Yard for a year where there was a few drone companies. There was some like automated woodworking. There was really cool stuff going on in there. Actually, the company that makes the camouflage for the U.S. military is based there. And then there was this legacy business in the corner. And they were just, like you said, they were being exposed to so many new ways of thinking and new ways of working. And after a year in that incubator, even with all the constraints of being a big company, what they produced was they didn't even recognize it. I mean, what they started off to build and what they ended up with was so different just based on their environment.
Well, I think what's interesting so Easy Agile was actually one of the companies who were in the incubator.
Oh, that's
they weren't
really cool.
The company that I was working for at the time. But at some point or another, we actually got to sharing an office. I think Easy Agile at that point was 3 people, the co-founders and Satvik, who was their, first full-timer. And what was interesting, even being in that space where there was such a big cultural shift and change in the way of working for me, Easy Agile, even at that scale of 3 people, took it to a different level. So I really noticed that they were thinking in a different way, working in a different way, and I started to contract for them, luckily, for a couple of days a week before they offered me a full-time role, and that was in 2017, and I've been there ever since.
What was that role that you contracted for?
I've had a bit of a journey inside of Easy Agile as well.
I'm sure as a startup it was do everything we need for this many hours a week.
A little bit, right? So I actually started off in the partner space. So Easy Agile is a company that builds native applications for Atlassian's Jira. And our co-founders were actually ex-Atlassians too. So a lot of early day thinking was around how Atlassian had structured their business, and a big part of their distribution model was around partnerships, and that's how they would go to market. Atlassian at that point didn't have any direct salespeople, and so we were kind of replicating a similar model as a way to scale us. So I was first brought on to establish our first partner program and to start to establish our first relationships with partners and to try and scale our ability to sell software from a town called Wollongong in Australia to, now all across the world.
That's so cool. So how has your, I guess, position and role in Easy Agile evolved as the company has grown? Have you been able to kind of pick and choose what's most interesting to you and keep that and get rid of the rest?
Yeah, so I guess I started off in partnerships and it was marketing at the time too. You're a startup. You're doing what you need to do to get done, right? And where I started to find I was super passionate was in identifying that partners are actually an amplifier for customer feedback. So you can speak directly to customers, and that's obviously a great way to get feedback. But when you speak to a partner, they can tell you, in the last 10 times I've rolled this out, 8 out of 10 times, here's what customers are saying. So I was really quickly getting an amplified view on where our products were winning, where they were failing, the gaps that they had. And that really pushed me into a product role. So my next role at Easy Agile was in a product role, which was incredible. I was in that role for quite some time before I was lucky enough to actually head up our product division. And more recently, now I'm in our customer experience team, heading up customer experience. So I've had a bit of a transition in the last 12 months.
I mean, a transition, but it's all still so related. I mean, when I think about a lot of product people, right, and a lot of the things that they're missing, they're usually very good technically, but they miss a market perspective. And the same thing with experience, right? You can get people that are good at engineering components of an experience, but they really struggle to get the whole picture. So I would think, coming from your background, your execution of those roles a lot more successful than maybe some other people would have been because you have a very unique perspective.
Yeah, I think the customer experience is really an interface of that marketing experience and having more of a business lens around things, but also because we were so small when I started in product, I got the opportunity to have really technical conversations with people and them have the time to have those conversations, which in turn has given me a level of proficiency there. I'm not going to say I'm an expert. The team at home will probably be laughing, but I've definitely found that the customer experience is a really nice interface between the two and where I found I'm really passionate.
So what are you building now?
So most recently, we've just built a Azure DevOps version of our product Easy Agile programs. So it's a kind of an art solution for, firstly, it was for Jira, and now we're expanding into the ADO space.
Excellent. So what is your full suite of offering? I mean, what all does Easy Agile provide to the market?
Up until recently, with the step into Azure DevOps, we've been solely a Jira kind of a Jira shop. So building native integrated tooling around PI planning, retrospectives, user story mapping, and kind of backlog refinement within Jira.
Which we all recognize. I mean, Jira was never built to do the things that we do now, right? I mean, it's a bug tracking tool that evolved into work management, and you threw Confluence on top.
It's really powerful.
Sure, it is super powerful, but there's obviously, and people love it, by the way. I mean, like developers love Jira. But then when you look at trying to control, how that work flows through a system, and when you try and get visibility to how all the work interconnects, I mean, Jira does need some help, right?
Yeah, I think the power around our tooling, and especially what we hear from customers, is we're still using that, that baseline Jira, the Jira data, that source of truth, but we're adding a really powerful visualization layer to the top.
How does an implementation model work with you all? So a company has Jira. If they want to get on board with Easy Agile, like what does that journey look like? Is it difficult? Are you able to do it on your own? Do you all offer consulting services to help with that?
So we're lucky playing in the Atlassian space that Atlassian have a really well-established partner program. So we're lucky enough to have partners all across the world, and a lot of them are here today. So it's been so good to catch up with some old mates. We can go through, typically we'll see enterprises go through a partner. But just in essence, our tools are fairly simple in that they rely on base Jira data. So for a lot of our tools, they're really plug and play.
The implementation's fairly straightforward. You've got a good partner network. Atlassian obviously has a fantastic partner network. So you mentioned earlier that a lot of the feedback that you get comes through the partner network. So let's talk about those feedback loops. I mean, how do you engage those? How do you know what feedback to welcome, what feedback to thank and let go of? What does that look like in your world?
Yeah, I mean, look, all feedback is welcome, but not all feedback is created equal.
By the way, that is something I've tried really hard to embrace personally this year. I welcome all feedback and I struggle to let some of it go, but sometimes you need to.
Oh, yeah. I guess with our partner network and the feedback is creating those really good relationships up front and being super transparent about what we're working on, what we're interested on. And it gives them a bit of a way to filter out what feedback to filter through to us as well. I think that a lot of feedback can get really technical and can be really specific to a very specific use case and configuration, which is really important in certain customers' contexts, but it's explaining, we're trying to build a scalable product that needs to work for a large audience. And it's really hard for customers to hear that sometimes when you're not able to, fulfill a need that's very specific to them. But for us, we're not in the business of boutique app development.
Well, and I think that was a trap that a lot of companies got into, I guess we'll say, big batch release days, right? Where they would take feedback from everybody, they would create those enhancement requests, and they would try to be all things for everybody.
Yeah.
And then those solutions ended up not being really very effective for anybody because they tried to be mean, you remember those apps, you would open it up, they have all these weird fields and just things that don't make sense. They're not very user friendly. And it's because there were 7 different clients that requested 200 enhancements and only 2 people in the world are actually using them.
Yeah. I think that's where it's really important to have a clear understanding around what the purpose of your application is and to be true to the DNA of your company. We're called Easy Agile.
Yeah. Well, what is your purpose statement?
So our purpose is to help teams realize the benefits of Agile. So we see teams doing Agile.
Going through the motions.
Doing the ceremonies, ticking the boxes. Yes, we're Agile. We don't often see companies get to the point of being Agile, as in really adopting that mindset and therefore truly realizing the benefits of agility. And so for us, yes, we can build the applications that enable those teams to do the ceremonies and go through the motions, but we really want to take it to the next level to kind of unlock the value realization and the cultural change of agility.
So how do you start visualizing that? How do you really help people understand, see, and feel those outcomes?
I guess the first thing for us is that we have to let go of a fear of people pleasing. And what that means is that we are opinionated in our products. So we're not trying to be all things to everybody. What that means is we do, disappoint people at times. Maybe the people who aren't meant to be in our tribe.
Sure. Well, and that's such an important realization too. And I feel like that's a metaphor for life, right? I think we all go through a maturity phase of life where we try to please everybody. We want everybody to like us. And then we get to a point in life when we realize that, well, not everybody's meant for us. And that's okay. I mean, I don't remember who said it, but someone told me once, I think it actually, I'm in trouble. My grandmother told me this.
Sorry, Grandma.
She looked at me one day and she said, Adam, you can't be everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. And it's so profound, but you're absolutely right. There's going to be some people that they're not meant for your tribe.
Yeah.
They're not meant to use your solution. They work different. They think different. And that's completely okay.
And that's the meta way of looking at it. But the way that manifests.
Meta as in macro level, not meta.
Yeah. Meta as in macro level, not meta.
Instagram, Facebook. Got it. Okay,
yes.
Just want to clarify.
Yeah, but the way that manifests in building software is that you become really difficult for people to configure because you've tried to be everything to everybody. And really what that does is it stops people realizing the value of your tool. But for us, it stops people from realizing the benefits of agility.
Sure. And then architecturally speaking, you've got a mess.
Yeah,
both
for sure.
In terms of how your application operates and then just the back end is a mess.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of round it out, the way that we combat that is we don't have a fear in being opinionated where we believe that it matters. Mm-hmm. And we have to have really, difficult conversations with people sometimes why we're not going to do something, but not be apologetically unapologetic about it.
That's part of agility though too.
Yeah.
Right. You have to have those crucial conversations, right? You have to take ownership over the things that are meaningful to you. And, there's a way to respectfully disagree or graciously say no. And I think the way that a lot of us are raised, that's just not natural. And when you talk about the cultural change of being agile, it all comes down to behavior, right? We're not comfortable saying no. We're not comfortable with people not being happy with us. We're not comfortable maybe choosing the correct path that is the best thing for us as an organization, but not necessarily for me personally in my career. Those are the things that make all of this so difficult, because when you look at, the Agile Manifesto and you look at SAFe as a framework, procedurally, it's all easy, right? It's SAFe. You just, prioritize some stuff, meet, make some commitments, execute on those commitments, easy breezy. But it's the people and our personalities and our emotions and our natural resistance to change that make it all so difficult.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I think at any point you inject people into anything, you add complexity beyond compare. Yeah.
But that's what makes it all so fun, though.
That's exactly right.
You can either choose to be frustrated or choose, I think like you said, this was actually what Chris said this morning in the keynote, or you can choose to be curious. And I find myself being the most drawn to and the most curious about people who are most unlike myself. I don't want to talk to people who agree with me because they already agree with me. And what am I going to learn?
Yeah.
I want to go find people that have dramatically different opinions and then just understand their worldview and perspective and all the things. I'm not necessarily going to agree with them, but I want to understand.
I think that's a big part in, especially the feedback that you do receive that maybe doesn't align with, our company ethos or the way that we are, wanting to build products. You want to understand why. What led you, or what experiences have you had that have led you to believe that is true, or just to empathize. Mostly my role is just to empathize the legacy mess that people inherit.
And that's a lot of it, right? A lot of that mess is inherited. It's not something people build on their own.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. So I think anything with feedback, even if it's not something that you will take on board and apply and action, I think just as humans and connecting and for understanding, at least having that conversation, giving that person a chance to vent.
Sure.
And often when you're not actioning that feedback, just having the forum to have that conversation is enough for that person.
I think that's a great point. I think more often than not, people just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you don't implement whatever feedback it is that they're giving you, having had the opportunity to give the feedback and recognize that it's been heard, that's enough for most people. Right. And then if the feedback is actionable and we all get this, right? You get feedback and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't see that of myself. I didn't see that of my solution. That's an amazing idea. Thank you. Like, let's go build stuff.
And just because that one person's piece of feedback in that moment isn't applicable or actionable doesn't mean that something in the future won't be. And so having that conversation, you keep that door open. And we definitely see where we've had, really great engagements with customers or partners. It's not the first time we've spoken. It's not the third time we've spoken. It's that fifth time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's with life too, right? I mean, you get feedback from all different people about all different things. And it might not be that first interaction that's the most valuable, but when you continue the relationship and the people get to know you better and they can give you that feedback that really is eye-opening.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And I think at that fifth engagement, right, you kind of understand the rules of engagement and how each other interact, and you kind of cut the crap a little bit more on that fifth time and you really get to the crux of it.
Or maybe you're the kind of person that just cuts straight to it from the first relationship and it takes 3 or 4 interactions for people to realize that you're not just a giant jerk face.
Well, there's definitely been those as well. You got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah. All different types of people.
Yes.
Can you just kind of walk us through just macro level? Tell us about Easy Agile. What's the elevator pitch? How do people find you? Can they get a trial? Let us know. Like, I want to know all the things.
Yeah. So I would say that we're built by 2 ex-Atlassians. So Nick Muldoon was a former product manager for Jira. Dave Elkin was a former developer on Jira as well. So it's a space that we know really well. Nick went on to provide agile coaching at Twitter. So it was kind of combining agility and a tool that we knew touched hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So it was a really strong platform. But we essentially started off with digitizing what was typically physical agile ceremonies. So in user story mapping, in PI planning, and of course the world has changed quite significantly. So we build visualization tools for agile ceremonies, PI planning, user story mapping, retrospectives within Jira.
I mean, the user story mapping is super interesting. I don't think I know of anyone else providing any digital solution for story mapping.
Yeah, look, there certainly when we first built the user story map, it was quite an anemic space. We've definitely seen, more tools come out on the market in the last few years, which I think for us only reinforces the fact that user story mapping as a practice is growing in curiosity. I often run these activation workshops that are around different use cases, and the thing that people are most interested in exploring is user story mapping, which is really cool.
I mean, especially when you start mapping that back to experience architecture and journey mapping. I mean, that just opens up the door. I think a lot of the times, and I was guilty of this when I, first got Agile in my engineering nerdiness, I used story mapping from a very technical standpoint, right? I wanted to make the architecture work in a neat and clean way. But then when you start realizing the benefits of understanding how that relates to a journey map, a user experience, or how it fits into usability of the overall solution, whatever it may be. I mean, a technical component is part of it, right? You want to design technically sound and elegant solutions, but not in a way that hampers usability and just general experience. So I think there's so many things to explore around story mapping, especially as we start embracing these new disciplines like experience architecture.
Yeah, certainly the technical component is an important one, but I think the key value there is just building a shared understanding as a team together around why you're doing what you're doing and who you're serving.
I think if you can solve that for the world, you can retire pretty soon. I mean, that's the biggest thing for most of these organizations that are represented here today is they lack the why. Why are we doing what it is that we're doing? What's the value? I mean, even a SAFe transformation, right? If you embrace SAFe and start doing SAFe for the sake of doing SAFe, that was a lot of similar sounding words. But at any rate, it's not going to be very fun because we're changing for what, right? So you have to anchor in, we need to accomplish this thing. We need to do this thing. And this is how we're going to get there. That why is just something that I think as a human species, we're not very good at.
And you've totally articulated a question that I asked in one of the open sessions yesterday. I think here at SAFe Summit, is that what it's called? An open?
Was it yesterday during Partner Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, open space.
Open space session. So it was a forum where you could pitch, I guess, a question or a topic that you were hoping to explore. People would vote on it and then you would go and discuss. And the topic that I pitched was, how do you help organizations understand why they're adopting SAFe and not just going through the motions? They often want to see an ROI, but it's an ROI on what? Well, why are you adopting it? What benefits do you think this is going to give you? Let's start there. And it was actually it was the most voted topic.
Sure.
So it's something that we're all kind of, pondering.
Sure. And I think a lot of organizations, they want to measure something, right? So they start measuring things that are really intended for the teams to better understand how they're working, right? So if you start looking at like team level metrics, well, they're not for management. They're for the team to better understand what's going on with them to improve their process. And the same thing with the art. But those tend to be the things that management looks at to say you're a good art or a bad art. And it's all irrelevant. It's got to be about, well, what are we trying to achieve? Is it greater customer satisfaction? Is it market penetration? What is it? Working in this way helps us get there because we can look for different feedback loops. We can look for all sorts of different things. But what are those things? What's the thing we're working towards? And how do we measure how we're achieving towards that target?
And you can measure everything. And as you said, like if I'm, the CTO who's kind of sponsored rolling out SAFe and you present me the team level health metrics, is that really going to be enough for me to justify or to say we've done well or we haven't? No.
It depends on the CTO. If it's a CTO who never got out of engineering, they want to know all that stuff. But if it's a CTO that's working at the right altitude,
yes,
they should have no interest in that.
Exactly. And I think when it comes to feedback loops as well, I'm talking about, what is the why around, adopting anything, a technology, a framework, whatever it is.
A new way of eating.
A new way of eating, exactly. We often focus very heavily on those lagging indicators. So we have to understand the why, and then we need to figure out those leading indicators around whether this is being successful or not, and those early feedback loops.
Sure.
So we can course correct or we can celebrate, whatever it is.
And again, that's so hard because as a society, we're so hardwired into lagging indicators. I mean, if you look at like what's going on in the world now with interest rates and everything and the things that they're measuring, well, you're not going to see those numbers move until the damage has been done. So like, what is your leading indicator? How do you actually know inflation or whatever the metric is moving in the right direction? Because all we're focused on is lagging indicators.
And it's so negative too, because we're focused on lagging indicators. We're talking about these upcoming cliffs, where people are getting off these fixed rates who are going to hit these variable rates. And you think, okay, well, we know that that's coming. It's a lagging indicator. What can we start to, what things do we have now that we can look at to course correct or provide some assistance? And I think the same is true to business too. And if you think about that, you're not going to see, the ROI that you're expecting for like 12 months.
Hey, it's going to be years.
Yeah. So
in some regards. And I sure hope that there's something that you can look at to say whether or not you're going to be successful well in advance of years. Because if you're looking years out and said, well, that didn't work out, you're probably out of business.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, something even for Easy Agile, a company of, 60 people, right? Small. In the last few quarters, really, we're really focusing on leading indicators.
Sure.
We need to obviously look at the lagging, because at the end of the day, that's the dollar amount, or it's the engagement amount, whatever it is that we're looking at. But creating feedback loops and being really specific on those leading indicators is powerful.
Tegan, this is great. Where can people go to learn more about Easy Agile? Where can they go to interact with the solution?
You can go to our website, so easyagile.com. You can learn a little bit about our product suite there. You can also go to the Atlassian marketplace and learn there. That's where you can get access to some of our free demos or our network of solution partners, particularly for the enterprise. That's really a great way to start. More often than not, you'll have a partner. You might not know it, so you need to talk to the right people. But yeah, they're the three places I'd recommend.
SAFe Summit Berlin in April. That could be a fun one.
That could be a fun one. I haven't been to Berlin for a few years.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, personally. But that's just me. I'm biased.
It's a great place.
Cool. Well, Tegan, I hope to see you there. And for everyone else, check out Easy Agile at easyagile.com. Anything to part with? Where can they find you, Tegan? If they're like, man, I want to learn more about that person, where do they go?
You can go to my LinkedIn, so Tegan Harbridge, or the Easy Agile website. I don't bite. I love a chat. Similarly to yourself, I like to speak with people who are very different to me. So if you've not been in marketing, product, and customer experience, come and talk to me.
Tegan, thank you for the time.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The entire team at Scaled Agile is focused on helping you be better at work so that you can help your enterprise be more successful in the new age of business. If there's anything else we can do to help, if there are any other assets you'd like to see, content, podcast guests, just let us know. Also, please check out SAFe Studio, where you'll find tools, toolkits, resources, videos, and so much more to help you be successful in the world of work. As always, if you appreciate this content, the greatest compliment you can give us is a referral to a friend or colleague. And if you feel so inclined, we do always appreciate those likes, comments, subscribes, and reviews on your podcast platform of choice. My name is Adam Mattis. Until next time, as they say, stay safe.